He did not panic when she cried. He did not panic when she begged him to talk. He did not panic when she sent long messages trying to save the relationship. He panicked when she stopped. No second text, no explanation, no final attempt to bring him closer. Just silence. For months he had controlled the distance between them. When he pulled away, she reached out. When he went cold, she tried harder. When he disappeared, she blamed herself. Then, one day, the pattern stopped, and the distance he had always used to feel safe no longer felt like freedom. It felt like loss. This is what can happen when someone with avoidant attachment patterns is no longer being chased by the person who kept the connection alive. Not every avoidant person behaves the same way. Some people ask for space honestly and return when they say they will, but in unhealthy relationships, distance can become more than a need. It can become a system. One person withdraws, the other pursues. One person controls when closeness is allowed, the other works to earn it back. At first, both people may call this chemistry. The anxious partner feels the intensity and mistakes it for depth. The avoidant partner feels relief because they can have connection without staying fully vulnerable. But beneath that intensity, a painful loop is forming. The avoidant pulls back. The other person notices immediately. A slower reply, a colder tone, a conversation left unfinished, warmth that disappears without explanation. So they reach out. Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? Can we talk? Please tell me what changed. Those questions are not weakness. They are attempts to restore safety. But over time, the avoidant may begin to depend on them. Every anxious message proves the other person is still there. Every attempt to repair the connection proves that withdrawal has not cost them the relationship. They can create distance without fully losing access. They can avoid vulnerability while still feeling wanted. And the other person becomes responsible for keeping the bond alive. That is where attachment can begin to look like control. Not always deliberate control, not always calculated, but still a power imbalance, because one person decides when connection begins and ends, while the other person pays the emotional cost of every withdrawal. The avoidant may tell themselves they are simply independent. They may say they need space. They may believe the other person is too emotional, too demanding, or too sensitive. Sometimes that may be true, but sometimes distance is doing something else. It is regulating fear. Closeness can activate old beliefs. I will lose myself. I will be trapped. I will be rejected. I will need someone who can hurt me. So they retreat. And when the other person chases, the avoidant receives two forms of reassurance. The connection still exists, and they are still the one controlling the distance. That is why the cycle can repeat for months or years. One person keeps hoping the right explanation will create safety. The other keeps hoping more distance will create relief. Neither person gets what they actually need. Then comes the breaking point. It rarely looks dramatic. The person who has been chasing does not always explode. Sometimes they simply understand. They notice that every conversation returns to the same place. Every apology is followed by the same withdrawal. Every promise lasts only until intimacy becomes uncomfortable again. And something inside them changes. Not anger, clarity. That clarity is different from the silent treatment. The silent treatment is designed to provoke a reaction. Clarity does not need one. It does not wait for the other person to panic. It does not check whether the message was received. It simply stops participating in the cycle. No second text, no repeated boundary, no attempt to prove that basic needs are reasonable. No more translating silence into hidden love. And suddenly, the avoidant is left with the distance they created. At first, they may feel relief. No pressure, no difficult conversation, no demand for emotional closeness. But relief often depends on believing the other person is still waiting. When that belief begins to disappear, the silence changes. The avoidant checks their phone. Nothing. They open the conversation, no new message. They look at the last thing the other person sent and notice there was no question at the end, no invitation to return, no emotional door left open. The old system expected pursuit. Instead, it received stillness. That creates uncertainty, and uncertainty can be harder for an avoidant than distance itself. Distance can feel controlled. Uncertainty cannot. Now, they do not know what the other person is feeling. They do not know whether the connection can be restarted. They do not know whether their silence still has power. For the first time, they are no longer choosing space. They are experiencing it. That difference matters. Many avoidant people can tolerate being alone when they believe they created the separation. But when the other person emotionally detaches, the separation can begin to feel like rejection. The fear they pushed away returns. Did I lose them? Did they stop caring? Are they happier without me? What if they do not come back? The person who once seemed calm may begin checking social media, rereading old messages, or sending small tests. A casual question, a reaction to an old post, a message that pretends nothing happened. These are often called breadcrumbs. They create contact without requiring accountability. The avoidant may not be ready to discuss the pattern. They may only want to know whether access still exists. That is why a return does not always mean change. Missing someone is not the same as being ready for intimacy. Feeling rejected is not the same as understanding the harm caused by withdrawal. Sending a message is not the same as becoming emotionally available. This is where the person who stopped chasing has to be careful. The silence may have changed the power dynamic, but that should not become the goal. The goal is not to make the avoidant chase. The goal is to stop abandoning yourself. Because when silence is used as a tactic, the same game continues, only the roles reverse. But when silence comes from a real boundary, the game ends. A boundary says, I will not keep repairing a connection you repeatedly abandon. I will not keep proving that my needs deserve respect. I will not call confusion love. I will not carry both sides of this relationship. That is not punishment. It is self-protection, and it forces the relationship to reveal the truth. If the avoidant returns only because the chase stopped, the cycle may begin again. Warmth returns, hope returns, closeness grows. Then vulnerability appears. The avoidant feels threatened and withdraws once more. That is repetition, not healing. Real change looks different. It includes accountability. The avoidant can name what happened. They can admit that silence and distance had an impact. They can ask for space without disappearing. They can communicate even when closeness feels uncomfortable. They can stop expecting the other person to regulate every fear for them. And the person who used to chase must change too. They must stop confusing understanding with responsibility. They can recognize the avoidance wounds without becoming responsible for healing them. They can care without chasing. They can offer compassion without surrendering every boundary. This matters because the anxious-avoidant cycle is built from two survival strategies. One person moves closer when afraid. The other moves away. The closer one moves, the farther the other retreats. The farther one retreats, the more urgently the first person pursues. Both nervous systems are trying to create safety. Together, they create instability. The cycle changes only when someone stops following the script. Sometimes the avoidant learns to stay present. Sometimes the other person stops chasing. And sometimes the relationship ends because one person wants connection while the other wants access without vulnerability. That truth can hurt, but it is cleaner than spending years trying to earn consistency from someone who treats closeness like a threat. If you are the person who has been chasing, understand this. Your silence is not powerful because it makes someone panic. It is powerful because it gives you room to hear yourself again. Without their withdrawal controlling your attention, without their mood deciding your worth, without another unanswered message pulling you back into the same question. What did I do wrong? Maybe the better question is, why have I accepted a relationship where clarity disappears whenever I need it most? And if you recognize yourself in the avoidant pattern, the silence may be showing you something too. The person who stopped chasing may not be trying to punish you. They may be exhausted. They may have finally accepted the message your behavior kept sending. That closeness would always be temporary, that their needs would always feel like pressure, that they would always have to choose between connection and self-respect. Avoidant attachment is not a life sentence. These patterns can change. But change requires more than missing someone after they leave. It requires the courage to stay present before they have to. It requires saying, I feel overwhelmed, but I do not want to disappear. I need space, but I will not leave you in confusion. Closeness scares me. but I am willing to understand why. That is emotional responsibility. Without it, the silence keeps returning. Different partner, same distance, same relief, same emptiness, until the avoidant finally realizes that the walls built to prevent abandonment have become the reason people leave. The most important moment is not when the other person goes silent. It is what happens next. Does the avoidant reach for control, or do they reach for accountability? Does the other person reopen the door because they feel guilty, or do they wait for evidence that something has truly changed? Because silence can reveal the pattern, but only behavior can break it. So if someone comes back after you stop chasing, do not ask only whether they missed you. Ask whether they can stay present without making you pay for their fear. A message is not repair. Regret is not consistency. And returning is not the same as changing. The truth is not revealed by who comes back. It is revealed by what they do after the door opens. That is the lesson inside this pattern.